Welcome to the online presentation of Multi-Age at the Dahlgren School. I am Patricia Phillips, and on behalf of Miss Belillo, our Community Superintendent, Miss Fairfax, our Lead Administrator at the Dahlgren School, and the educators at Dahlgren, we are so happy that you can join us on this journey that we are embarking upon. Please, sit back and enjoy. Have a pen and paper ready for any questions that you may have. We encourage these questions so that we will have the opportunity to respond. Again, this is the presentation of the multi-age program at the Dahlgren School. We will refer to this as a community of learners. Imagine, if you will, what a perfect school might look like. Do you imagine a room where children are working at meaningful tasks? Perhaps you're looking at them in small groups. Maybe some are working with a partner, while others are working quietly by themselves. Perhaps you're listening to the hum of the room, indicating that children are talking to each other and to their teachers. Maybe you're hearing the questions and the responses and that active listening that occurs between teachers, students, and peers alike. Sometimes the air is punctuated by a triumphant yes when a child has successfully completed something. Or maybe you notice that they're asking for help, not just from the educator, but from another student within the room. Perhaps you're thinking that I want this room to feel really warm and inviting. I want to feel welcome in the room too. Perhaps you're thinking that. All of these things and more might be your idea, your vision of what a perfect school might look like. This is the definition of a multi-age classroom. I'll give you a moment to read that. As educators, we believe that children learn at different rates and times. We also believe that children progress when they receive just in time instruction. It means that each child is an individual, and their degree of learning happens at different times. We call this a continuum of learning. This is a further definition of multi-age. Have you ever heard yourself say, "Oh my goodness, I hope my child is ready for kindergarten"? Or perhaps, "Oh, Mom, wondering if they're going to be ready for first grade." However, perhaps we as educators should be ready for the child. Every child that walks in the room. We should be able to address their unique needs. We are, after all, here only because of the children. Any school can pull together children of different ages, gender, and abilities, and refer to itself as a multi-age community. Dahlgren has a long tradition of being an exemplary school. Our multi-age community of learners will be no different. At Dahlgren, we will incorporate the components of a truly exemplary model of a multi-age environment. Such components are listed on the next two slides. We would love to have a strong participation from our parents and our community. You may find yourself wanting to volunteer. You may find yourself wanting to be part of our classroom for an hour or two a week. You may be one of those parents who prefers to take some work home, that sort of cutting out of materials that we as educators always seem to need. We so appreciate that. Our environment will be nurturing in its nature, collaborative. You will see groups of readers and writers working together with their educators. It is definitely a non-competitive environment where children see learning as the real focus of school. We will also have authentic learning environments which respect each child, their interests and concerns. We will encompass timely assessments to reflect exactly where the child is in their learning continuum and what we need to do in terms of strategy and instruction to move the child along in that continuum of learning. We call that just-in-time instruction. We will have integrated standard-based curriculum using developmentally appropriate practices and using the inquiry process. All of these things are part of an exemplary model of community of learners. The following 4 slides identify the theory behind multi-age. This is what we call the background behind the thinking of educating children. This research serves as our guide that drives the teachers to implement particular types of instruction. In other words, it's our professional belief on how young children learn best. If we look at the first one, it's the constructivist learning theory by a man called Jean Piaget. It encompasses the theory of educating the whole child, the cognitive, the physical, the social, and the emotional, because we know that unless we focus on all 4 of these domains, learning in early childhood does not transfer. We know that children construct their own knowledge. Just because we tell them something doesn't necessarily mean that that new knowledge attaches. We know that young children learn through active and meaningful experiences. We call that the hands-on approach. And we know also that children learn via a process. What do we mean by that? That basic skills are taught within the acts of reading and within the acts of writing. In other words, a child learns to read through reading, and a child learns to write through writing. They are not isolated skills. This is our why. Our research also includes the work of Lev Vygotsky. He talks about the social learning theory. In particular, what is called the zone of proximal development. Teachers refer to this as the ZPD. What this means is that your child has a level of knowledge, and the educator needs to move him along to the next level. However, if the educator jumps too far ahead, the additional knowledge is lost. It is not attached. It is the teacher's job to move the child carefully via scaffolding along to the next level. We also know that children learn through social interaction. They learn by talking. They learn by asking questions. They learn by listening. They learn this whether they are talking to an adult or whether they're talking to an older peer or whether they are talking to a younger peer, where they have to actually explain their thinking. And we know that children are emotional learners. In order for them to learn best, they have to feel happy and secure and confident in their environment. This allows them to safely take risks. Our third theorist is Bredekamp, who talks about developmentally appropriate practices. This is essential for early childhood education. Developmentally appropriate practices embraces a positive climate for learning, much evidence of motivation and guidance, with a curriculum that is integrated, using materials and supplies that are real and relevant to children's lives. Developmentally appropriate practices understand that a child learns on their own unique learning continuum. Our final theorist is Gopnik and the theory of mind. This theory respects the young child for being naturally curious, able to experiment with ideas to solve problems, and the ability to regard events happening all around, take it all in, and draw conclusions about what is happening and why it happened. Young children are naturals at this inquiry process, which is why most of our work will be evolving around the inquiry process. Our next slide discusses the history of multi-age education, which is, of course, nothing new in the United States. We began our educational journey with the one-room schoolhouse, where children of all ages were taught in the same room. The younger ones listened to the older ones, and the older ones listened to the younger ones. As our population grew and cities grew, we needed more than just one room. So a gentleman named Horace Mann talked about and implemented children of one age going to a class in one room, children of another age going to another class in another room. And of course we now know this as the graded system. It was actually referred to as the factory model. In essence, children were viewed as being on a conveyor belt, and they progressed along that conveyor belt. Unfortunately, the factory model did not take into account that children learn at different rates. In the 1990s, Kentucky discovered the multi-age program and implemented it across their state. In 1995, the Michigan Department of Education felt the same way, and 1 in 5 of their districts were multi-age education. To date, there are many districts that have both the graded, such as first grade, second grade, third grade, etc., and the non-graded, the multi-age classrooms, in one district. In fact, we have a model where you'll have a school that has some graded and some non-graded classrooms within. Dodea currently has 48 multi-age learning environments. So you can see we are definitely not alone in this. So let's think about what our Dahlgren school model will look like. I know that you're very excited to learn about this slide. Let's talk for a moment about what the physical learning environment will look like. What will that one big room consist of? What will be in there? Well, it's going to look completely different from what it is now. It will be completely retrofitted to best suit student needs. We'll have an area for whole group where the entire community comes together to sort of set the tone for the day. We'll have at different corners throughout the room areas where whole group can also gather. This whole group might consist of grade level specific activities, or it might be cross-grade level specific activities. We'll have areas for small group guided instruction in literacy and math. We'll also have areas dotted throughout the room for quiet, independent activities. And also toward the center of the room will be our kindergarten centers or workstations, alongside areas where cooperative workstations will be situated. As you can hear, and you will be able to see, it will be an environment that is conducive to how well and how best our young students learn. It will, in essence, support your child's learning. So let's look now at what our teaching staff will comprise of. We'll have 3 early childhood and elementary teachers, along with 1 paraprofessional. We'll also have 1 student support teacher who will assist us in reading, math, and also serve as one of our specialists in the afternoon. Our music teacher is extremely excited about the opportunity to push in daily during her particular love of English language arts. Our gifted education teacher also equally enthusiastic about coming in to join us 2 days a week, again during that English language arts time frame. Our speech teacher will come in to assist her students and provide services as appropriate. Our educational technologist, also our math lead teacher, will be pushing in daily to help with our technology component. Our special ed teacher will push in as the schedule allows and to provide services to her students as appropriate. And of course our parent volunteers, always very welcome, not mandatory, but we are always happy to see you. And continuing on with what our Dahlgren model will look like. We will have kindergarten through 3rd grade students in a standards-based curriculum. What does that mean? We will teach to the DODEA standards for kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, and more about how we will do that a little bit later. But we will include our college and career-ready math in exactly the same manner as we are currently doing. We will have our balanced literacy, much the same way as we are already doing. We will meet each student's literacy needs, whether it be by an independent one-on-one, or in a small group guided reading lesson, or in a whole group based on student needs. We'll have an integrated social studies and a science inquiry-based projects. We call these project-based learning. We'll also have our specials daily: art, music, PE, and enrichment. So let's talk a little bit about what our daily schedule will look like. What will your child do, and at what time of the day will they do it? Our day will begin with an arrival and community building meeting. All students will gather together within our neighborhood. We'll talk about the objectives of the day. We'll talk about what we're going to do during the day. And we'll talk about ways to build our community, how to help each other, how to support each other, and how to learn and grow together. Next, we'll have our interrelated and our integrated studies. This is where we will work on English language arts, social studies, and science. Next, we'll take our 20-minute recess break. We'll come back in and we'll have our 90 minutes of math, which will begin grade level specific with a mini lesson. Then the children will go to their workstations and some will meet with the teacher for guided math, and then we'll all come back together, grade level specific, for our closing. This is the DODEA model, currently in practice. Next, we'll have our lunch, then the children will go to specials, and we'll round out our day using our integrated approach, answering and responding to the driving question of our inquiry project. And again, more on that a little bit later on in this presentation. This next slide is a graphic for the interrelated and integrated instructional model. You'll see at the top the words driving question. This driving question comes from our project-based learning inquiry model. The children will be asked to respond to an authentic problem that has meaning and relevance for them. They answer this question using the knowledge that they gain throughout the day. In the morning, we have our interrelated content block. This block consists of our college and career-ready standards, the skills within each one of those standards, the ability to make authentic connections to the problem, and also using all of the curriculum resources that we currently have at our disposal. In the afternoon is the integrated project block. Within this block, the children take the knowledge from the skills and the standards that they've gained in the morning, and they use those skills and knowledge to apply to the driving question. The question has relevance to them and their daily lives, and also allows them to use this newfound knowledge in a depth of inquiry. You have heard me use the words project-based learning, or PBL. We'll be using this as the basis for our inquiry projects. It allows children to learn the standards and the skills that they would normally do, but it also asks them to apply this knowledge to answer a real-world problem. This is very important in today's world and in preparing them for the jobs that they will have to do in this 21st century. I'm anticipating that one of your questions might be, how are we going to teach students in kindergarten, first, second, and third grade all the standards they need to know and make it meaningful and relevant to all? I'm going to answer that question for you. If you will, please click on the link that you see in green on your screen. It's going to take you to a curriculum map for one standard of social studies. The standard is civics and government, and at each grade level it has a disciplinary core idea, or in other words, a standard. Let's look at this carefully. In kindergarten, the standard is demonstrate knowledge of the qualities of a responsible citizen. If you read the first grade standard, you'll see that it is very similar. If you look at the second grade, again it is quite similar and builds on the kindergarten and the first grade standard. Now if you read the third grade standard, you'll see the parallels that occur and how it builds on the second grade, the first, and the kindergarten. As you think about that for a moment, you'll be able to see that there is a theme running through these standards, whether it's a kindergarten standard, the first, the second, or the third grade standard. From that theme that runs across all 4 grade levels, we can come up with a driving question. The driving question's underneath. It is what makes our community a safe place to live, work, and play. The students will be able to respond to this question. As they respond to this question, they will be asked to discover the information that's contained in each one of the standards that's appropriate for their grade level. If you continue to scroll down the document, you will see in pink is the standard and the components for kindergarten. In green is identified the first grade standard and components. Orange indicates the second grade standard and components. And finally, the blue indicates the third grade standard and components. The components that are highlighted are all that are included within the driving question. The ones that are not highlighted will be covered in alternate learning events. As you can see, this is how we can address the standards across the grade levels, but also make it a meaningful event as the children learn the knowledge necessary to respond to the driving question. Now, if you're like me, you like to see things written 2 ways. This is simply a graphic of what you have just looked at the previous link. At the top of the umbrella is the standard, civics and government. And then you're looking down at K, 1, 2, and 3, at the components within the standard. And then right at the bottom, you are seeing each standard as it is written in kindergarten, first, second, and third. Again, this is simply a graphic of what you saw in the link. Our next slide is going to allow you to follow the link to see an example of the project-based learning inquiry lesson plans, or the project design that teachers will use to plan their lessons. I would like you now to follow that link so you will be able to see the same thing that the teacher uses as they plan. Within this link, you're going to see the name of the project. You're going to see the curricular areas that it addresses. For an example, this one addresses social studies and English language arts. You're going to see the idea behind the project. You're going to see again that driving question that we talked about earlier. Underneath that, you're going to see all of the standards that are taught within this one unit. If you carry on further down the document, you're going to see exactly what it is that the children need to be able to do in order to respond to the driving question and how it will be taught. Again, this is a kind of a planning document, if you will, that teachers use to map out the child's instruction. We have come to our last slide. This is the opportunity for you to ask questions, or to have a comment perhaps, or maybe it's a wondering that you have. I wonder what this is going to look like. or I wonder if this is going to happen. We welcome your questions, we welcome your comments, and we certainly welcome your wonderings. Perhaps it is something that we have not considered and that we need to. Please do not hesitate to contact us by email or by telephone. We welcome all of your questions, your comments, and those all-important wonderings. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen through our presentation, and we look forward to hearing from you.